The following presentation is brought to you by Discovery Education, leading the world of digital and video learning. Discovery Education, connect to a world of learning.
Let's take a journey down Europe's Rhine River. The Rhine begins its route to the sea high in the Alps mountains of Switzerland. It collects water from other mountain streams as it flows past alpine villages. It continues along the border of the tiny country of Liechtenstein and then flows into Lake Constance. This lake forms part of the border between Switzerland and Germany. After the river leaves the lake, it plunges over the Rhine Falls and flows westward, marking the border between Switzerland and Germany. Then it turns sharply to the north and forms the border between Germany and France. Here, it flows through a broad, flat valley. The French side of the valley is bounded by the Vosges Mountains. Vineyards stretch up the lower slopes and castles guard the heights. On the east side of the river, in Germany, the Black Forest rises above the valley floor. These mountains are named for the dark, evergreen trees on their slopes. Continuing northward, the river flows into German territory. By now, the Rhine has become a large river because of the waters of the many tributaries that flow into it. Large barges move up and down the river carrying many kinds of goods. Cities and factories line its banks. Then, the river enters a deep gorge where it has cut its way through the rocks of an old plateau. Many towns line the river in its course through the Rhine Gorge. Castles loom on the cliffs above the towns. The robber barons who built these castles used to collect tolls from boats passing along the river. The Rhine leaves its gorge south of the city of Cologne, where it flows past the towers of the city's cathedral. Further north, many factories have been built along the broad plain where the Ruhr River flows into the Rhine. From here to the sea, the countryside is low and flat. Many barges move along the river as it turns westward and flows from Germany into the Netherlands. Here its waters are contained by high dikes built to protect towns and farmlands from floods. Much of the land by the river is below sea level. Windmills that used to pump excess water out of the fields still stand, but the job is done now by large electric pumps. Finally, near the city of Rotterdam, the Rhine enters the North Sea, which is part of the Atlantic Ocean. Our journey down the Rhine has showed us a great deal about the European landscape with its high mountains, hills, plateaus, and low flat plains. Human history has been shaped by these landscapes over thousands of years. people have also changed the landscape to meet their needs. Europe is often called a continent, but it is actually a large peninsula that extends westward from the great landmass of Asia. Because Europe and Asia join each other across a broad area, geographers point out that they are not really separate continents. Instead, they make up a supercontinent called Eurasia. The geographical region of Europe described in this program includes the part of the European subcontinent that lies west of Russia. There are many separate countries in modern Europe. These are usually grouped into major subregions, such as the British Isles, Western Europe, Scandinavia, Central Europe, Southern Europe, and Eastern Europe. Europe includes several large islands. The islands of Great Britain and Ireland lie in the Atlantic Ocean to the northwest of France. Iceland, an island located in the Atlantic far to the northwest of Great Britain, is also considered to be part of Europe. Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and Crete are large islands in the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean separates Europe from the continent of Africa. 3 large peninsulas extend continental Europe southward into the Mediterranean. The easternmost peninsula is the Balkan Peninsula, with the country of Greece at its southern tip. Greece is separated from Turkey by the Aegean Sea. A small part of western Turkey is in Europe, but most of the country is in Southwest Asia. The Aegean Sea is full of many islands that are famous in Greek mythology. The long, narrow Italian peninsula lies west of the Balkan Peninsula. The country of Italy is shaped sort of like a boot. West of the Italian peninsula is the Iberian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal share this land area. The eastern coast of the Iberian Peninsula lies along the Mediterranean Sea. The western and northern coasts face the Atlantic Ocean. A huge rock called the Rock of Gibraltar juts into the sea where the Mediterranean waters meet the Atlantic. Here, a narrow body of water called the Strait of Gibraltar separates Spain from Morocco in North Africa. Northern Europe also has peninsulas and islands. The large Scandinavian peninsula is shared by Norway and Sweden. Below the Scandinavian peninsula is the country of Denmark, which is made up of several islands and a peninsula that extends northward from mainland Europe. The Baltic Sea separates Scandinavia from the rest of Europe and, like the other seas, has been an important avenue for commerce for centuries. With so many islands and peninsulas, Europe has thousands of kilometers of coastline and many good harbors that can provide shelter for boats. Europe also has many navigable rivers. A navigable river is one that boats can travel up and down for a long distance. The Rhine and the Danube are Europe's most important navigable rivers. Both of these great rivers have their headwaters high in the Alps. In contrast to the Rhine, which flows north and west, the Danube flows south and east. Other important European rivers include the Ebro, the Duero, and the Guadalquivir in Spain, the Loire and the Rhone in France, and the Elbe in Germany. Many great cities have been built along these rivers and along other smaller rivers. For example, Paris, the capital of France, lies along the Seine. The Thames winds through London, the capital of England, and the Tiber flows through Italy's capital, Rome. In addition, Europeans have built many canals that connect one river with another to make it easier for barges to move from place to place. With so many navigable rivers and so many seas and harbors, it is not surprising the Europeans have long moved their trade goods and themselves from place to place along these water routes. Modern Europe also has very well-developed systems of railroads and highways. As a general rule, Europe has more mountains toward the south and large expanses of plains in the north. Let's look at some of the main mountain ranges. The Alps are a rugged mountain range that makes an arc north from the Mediterranean coast of France, then east through northern Italy, Switzerland, Austria, and southern Germany. Many alpine peaks have glaciers on them. These glaciers were much larger in the past. The melting glaciers left sharp-peaked mountains called horns. The valleys that were carved out by glaciers have steep slopes rising above them. The highest peak in the Alps is Mount Blanc. It is located between France and Italy. With a summit of 4,813 meters, it is also the highest mountain in Europe. Although the Alps are high and rugged, there are many passes through them. A pass is a route through the mountains that is relatively easy to travel. Because there are so many deep valleys and low passes in the Alps, these mountains have never been a major barrier to the movement of travelers, trade goods, or armies. It is even easier to cross the Alps now because many tunnels have been built to connect the valleys. The Pyrenees Mountains, on the border between France and Spain, are more of a barrier to travel. There are few passes through their steep slopes. Other major mountain ranges in Spain include the Cantabrian and the Sierra Nevada Mountains. The Sierra Nevadas are famous because they once sheltered Granada, the last Muslim kingdom in Spain. Many beautiful palaces recall a time of Muslim rule. The Apennines are mountains that run through the center of the Italian peninsula. The many stone hill towns in the Apennines remind us of a day when high places offered protection against enemies. The Dinaric Alps run the length of the Balkan Peninsula. Other mountains are found in Scandinavia, Iceland, and Scotland. These northern mountains are not as high in elevation as the ones further south, but they are barren and rugged because they are at higher latitudes. Hills and low mountains are also found in parts of England, Belgium, and the countries of Eastern Europe. Agriculture in the hills and mountains varies with altitude, soil, and climatic conditions. Steep grassy areas above the elevation where trees do not grow well are used to pasture livestock. Cattle can be elaborately decorated when they are driven to the high mountain pastures for summer grazing and when they are brought back down to the valleys in fall. While the cattle graze high in the mountains, the grasses growing lower down the slopes are cut and dried to make hay. During the cold winters, the cattle live in barns and eat the hay. Many of the mountain slopes and hilly areas in Europe are covered with forests. These forests provide wood products and are also used for recreation. In some places, grapevines are grown on very steep slopes, which have stony soils that are not suitable for many other kinds of crops. The largest area of low, nearly level land in Europe is the Great North European Plain. Much of this plain was once covered by the continental glaciers. When the glaciers melted, they left an uneven land surface with depressions that are now small lakes. Parts of the North European plain are too sandy or low and marshy to be good for crop production. However, other areas have fertile soils and are used to grow wheat, sugar beets, and other crops. Smaller lowland areas are scattered throughout the subcontinent. The plain of Hungary is called the Puszta. It is noted for its traditional cattle and displays of excellent horsemanship. Italy has its broad Po Valley, and France has extensive plains along its southern Atlantic coast. Much of Spain is a plateau, called the Meseta. Although it is fairly high in elevation, it is relatively flat. England and Ireland have substantial low plains areas. A wide range of crops are grown in these various lowland areas. The types of crops vary with the climatic conditions in each region. Most of Europe lies in the temperate zone of the Northern Hemisphere. As a result, there's a definite change of seasons throughout the year. Seven different kinds of climates can be found in Europe. Subarctic and tundra climates are found in Iceland and northern Scandinavia. Coniferous forests are the natural vegetation of the subarctic regions, but the tundra climate has too short a growing season for trees to grow. Most of Western Europe has a marine west coast climate. This type of climate is relatively mild because of the influence of the prevailing westerlies, which are marine air masses that blow westward from the Atlantic Ocean. A north-flowing current carries warm ocean water along Europe's Atlantic coast. The prevailing westerly winds blow over this current, so they are fairly warm when they reach the land. Spring, in lands with marine west coast climates, is a long season with flowers and fruit trees blooming nearly a month before the deciduous trees sprout their leaves. Summer days are usually sunny and pleasant. It rarely gets extremely hot. However, clouds can cover the sky at any time, and summer rains are not unusual. The moderate summer temperatures and the frequent cloud cover result in low evaporation rates. This is good for agriculture because moisture is available for plants throughout the growing season. The weather in late summer and early fall is often dry in the more southern parts of this climate zone. Dry days provide good harvesting conditions for grapes, apples, and many other kinds of crops. In Western Europe, winters are rarely very cold, and snow is unusual except at higher elevations. More easterly parts of Europe have a humid continental climate. These lands are further from the sea, so they are less affected by the moderating influence of the prevailing westerlies. In addition, they are more likely to experience very cold winter air masses from Siberia. In these areas, summers are warmer and winters are colder than in locations with a marine west coast climate. Snow usually covers the ground in winter. These areas also get ample rain in summer and are good for growing crops. Much of the land is planted in wheat and other grains. Parts of northeastern Italy and the interior of the Balkan Peninsula have a humid subtropical climate. Here, the summers are hot and humid, and winters are fairly mild. Corn, brought here from the Americas, grows especially well in this type of climate. Southern Europe enjoys a Mediterranean climate, so named because it is found in lands bordering the Mediterranean Sea. This type of climate is characterized by hot, dry summers and mild, rainy winters. Cork oaks and olive trees are among the useful plants typical of these Mediterranean lands. Oranges and other fruits that grow in warm weather do well in some areas if water is available for irrigation during the dry summers. The Alps and other high mountain areas are classified as having a highland climate. Lower slopes are warm enough to farm. Forests and pastures cover higher slopes. The highest summits may be covered with snow and ice throughout the year. In addition to extensive areas with climates and soils that are good for agriculture and forestry, Europe has benefited from extensive mineral resources. Coal from the coalfields of Western Europe helped fuel the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th century, and oil from the North Sea oil fields became an important resource in the 20th century. Today, there is more demand for energy resources than can be met with European coal, oil, and gas, so Europeans have turned to nuclear fuels and wind power to generate more electricity. Europe is the westernmost part of the Great Eurasian landmass. Its islands and peninsulas give it a long coastline with many harbors, and it also has many rivers that can be used for transportation. Europe's ground and air transportation systems are also well developed. Proximity to the seas moderates the climate, and much of the land is suitable for productive agriculture. In addition, Europe has developed a modern industrial economy based on its many other natural resources.